afternoon. They represent firms that are great partners of the LCCI. We are grateful to you all for honoring us with your presence and for deeming it fit to invest in the future of our businesses through repositioning strategies that will ensure their continuity and sustainability. We trust that you will do justice to the topic of today so that at the end of this session, our participants will learn not just how to redesign their business models, but how to align them with current realities. Once again, we thank you for honoring our invitation. I also want to express a deep appreciation to all our distinguished participants, our guests, the executive and council members of the LCCI for joining us on this platform. I congratulate the chairperson of the BEST board, Mrs. Bamidele Daramola FCA, and other members of the BEST board as well as the entire secretariat for their efforts in ensuring the successful hosting of this program. So thank you once again for making time out to be with us today, and I wish us all an enriching and rewarding session. Thank you so much. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'd like to, before I proceed, recognize the chairperson of our Business Education and Services Unit, Mrs. Bamidele Daramola. She's a vice president of the chamber. It's our unit that is actually putting these events together. So, Madam, we'd like to welcome you to this session. Now, I'd like to hand over to the moderator of today's event to take over from here. My name is Muda Yusuf. I'm the DG, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Over to you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you so much, Dr. Muda. And thank you, Mrs. Toki Mabukunje, for that very apt address. I think that these are very interesting times for a number of businesses, both locally and globally. It's a time to reflect, it's a time to reshape, and it's a time to rebuild. I dare say that one thing that business owners can do at this time is to join fora like this, where ideas can be shared and tested, indeed. I think thought leadership at this time is more crucial than ever, as many businesses look to reshape and remodel their businesses in these interesting times. I'll very quickly take us to our panel conversations. Just before that, a little housekeeping rule. I'd like to say, for all our esteemed attendees, please feel free to post your questions at any point in time in the chat box. So moving on very quickly, I'd like to invite Dr. Biodun Adedipe to please share his perspectives on what he thinks businesses can do to reposition in these times for sustainability. Dr. Biodun Adedipe, over to you, sir.
Thank you so very much, Mrs. Ogunari. And let me also say here that I also appreciate the opportunity of being a part of this conversation. And there are three perspectives that I see to this. First is what has happened, which interestingly, the president of the chamber has given us an overview of. Then, of course, we're talking about the implications of that. And then coming to the question you raised, what should businesses be doing at a time like this? Now, I have a number of slides prepared, which I'll make available to the chamber to share with the attendees. But I will just refer to a few of them in this particular few minutes I have to contribute to this. So I will share my slides on the screen so that everyone can follow. Now, what I've done here is to show where our economy was, as Nigeria in particular, before COVID-19, and what has happened first quarter of this year, and in fact also where the whole world is at the present moment. What we are facing globally is 4 crises happening at the same time. The first is health crisis,
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Biodun Adedipe. Okay, great, he's back.
Yes, please.
Hello,
So,
sir. Okay.
yes, thank you very much. Now, let me get back to this screen I was sharing. Yes. Now, those are the 4 crises, but what are the major implications, which is the second issue I talked about here? We've seen massive demand and supply shock. We've seen collapse of global supply chains, which of course different countries have reacted to in various ways. Most of them now looking inwards, which also makes us to say that there is a seeming death of globalization on the way. The job losses, very massive all around the world. And of course, the recession that is already happening in some economies, which of course we fear for Nigeria, depending on how we deal with the issues arising from the impact of COVID-19 between now and the 3rd quarter of this year. 1st quarter year, the economy slowed down, do a growth of 1.87%, which is good. Now, what should businesses be doing? And that is what brings me to that's to answer the question. Number 1 is that businesses should recognize the irreversible changes to consumer behavior and the implications of that for the business model. Now, there is extreme uncertainty, even for the economy that have opened. Consumers have become very high and also selective of what is doing. So in which case, businesses generally as those in essentials and those that are in non-essential services. So in which case, therefore, what we be talking about will be how to deal with the issue of, I believe everyone can see my slide now. Now, what we'll be dealing with is a remodeling of businesses. In which case, if you're an essential services, that brings a lot of opportunities within this period. How do you maximize such opportunities? If you are not essential, how do you restructure your business model so that you still remain in business? What that will mean is that for every business, and this is my full answer to that question, has to come up with a plan that has 3 planks. The first plank is the first half of 2020, responding to COVID-19 and its implications and impact on your industry first and foremost, and then on your business in particular. How do you respond to that? Now, the second half of this year is a period that businesses should be giving a lot more attention to survival. And so a number of issues are raised there. The first is every business needs to intensify digitization. That is the first one. Now, the second one is that you have to now consider how to do end-to-end value digitization. Then your business model needs to be stress tested, in which case you want to establish whether truly what we're wrong with now can survive this period. And if it can't survive it, what do we need to change within the box? And of course, you need to assess COVID-19 impact on your customers, on your assets, liabilities, and even the issue of collateral that is talking about buffer.
So, Dr. Adedipe, I think we lost you for a bit. Very, very interesting points that Dr. Adedipe raised. The key points that resonate for me are really around the demand and supply dynamics that businesses will have to look critically at and understand what that means from a service portfolio perspective, the effects of globalization and recessionary pressures on a number of businesses, and what is the response mechanism that each business is going to develop from now into the beginning of next year and beyond. Thank you so much, Dr. Biodun Adedipe. Dr. Biodun Adedipe is the Chief Consultant of Biodun Adedipe and Associates, and I have learned so much from that short conversation. So I'll move, okay. So I'll move very quickly to Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. Mr. Oyedele is partner and head of tax and corporate advisory services at PwC. Mr. Oyedele, can you please share some of your perspectives on how businesses can reposition for sustainability in these interesting times?
Thank you very much indeed for that question, and thanks again to the LCCI for inviting me. So the way I'm going to be looking at that is focusing on how businesses can leverage on opportunities for sustainability. And I'm trying to categorize my discussion under three headings. One is in terms of managing the crisis, what have we learned? Also sharing my own experiences in dealing with this crisis. And the second one is how can we leverage on opportunities? And of course, the third one is my closing thoughts. So in terms of managing the crisis, I think we have to be very clear that it has to be people first. So this strategy works regardless of your sector, regardless of what you do. It has to be people first. We have to make sure that we stay safe as business leaders and keep our people safe. And then next to that is to stay sane. So we need to maintain that mental well-being so that we can even think straight. So the second one is around business continuity. And I think the most important is your liquidity. So that has to come with doing some cash flow planning during this period. Normally, businesses should do cash flow planning as a matter of course, but many of us are not that diligent in doing it. Now it's a critical business continuity consideration. And then we have to start thinking about, it's not just about your company being okay. Actually, you cannot be okay unless the entire ecosystem within which you operate is okay. So are your suppliers, are they okay? Can they continue in business? Is your supply sources secured? So you should be interested now in it's like, this joke about if somebody is owing you, you pray that nothing happens to them. So partly because you love them, two, because you don't want to lose your money. So that's important. Then for sustainability, it's really around, we have to think long term. Think about, your brand. Think about how do you deal with this. Some organizations will immediately react to a crisis like this by saying, you know what, we are cutting all costs by 20%. So we think that's a wrong strategy. What you should be cutting is not cost, you should be cutting waste. And then for whatever is left, think about how do you optimize value. Many companies will just shut down their training budget, whereas this is a time where they need not just the regular training, but to even upskill their workforce. Then the question is, again, how about lessons learned? Are we asking our people, the workforce, about how they're feeling? Are we asking our customers? What are the institutional learnings that we've been able to pick from this? What tends to happen is you find the very senior people are the ones dealing with the crisis, and their learning most times is not cascaded to the rest of the organization, and therefore other people repeat the mistakes or they cannot leverage on the experience that we have been able to gain. So I'll say, think about having a playbook about your experiences during this time. So in terms of the opportunities, I think first and foremost, we have to acknowledge that businesses are facing unprecedented challenges. But it's also important to note that these challenges will vary from sector to sector, but even within the same sector, from a company to another one. We conducted a study at PwC, and businesses said they had so many challenges. Top of that was liquidity. Next for them was safety of their personnel. And the third one was infrastructure to work from home. Others were things to do with sales and distribution, working capital management, cost reduction. But the idea is, even if you look at the GDP result that was just released a couple of days ago, so we had a growth of 1.87%. But that's the danger of average, right? Within that average, you find financial services, some segment of it growing by as much as 24%, information and communication by 10%, but then you also have oil refining contracting by as much as 53%. So the same way that we can say that COVID-19 is this and that, but then there are people who are thriving, we should therefore look for the opportunities for ourselves and for our businesses. So in trying to do this, you have to think ahead. In terms of your SWOT analysis, your strengths before COVID-19 may no longer be your strengths after COVID-19. If you were great at customer service because you were doing face-to-face, you have to think about how do you transfer that experience to an online interaction with your customers? How do you upskill your workforce to be agile enough to be able to respond to what you're seeing? And then how do you, for example, take advantage of the palliatives and the measures being introduced by government? And how do you accelerate? And Mr. Abiodun Adedipe, said this earlier on. How do you accelerate digitization and technology adoption? Because we know that things will no longer be the same even after COVID-19. So my final thought is to say that ultimately, the quality of leadership will determine the level of our success during this time. It's, in my view, the differentiating factor. And the way to look at that is look at it in terms of your workforce productivity. What needs to change about how you hire people, the people you hire, the job description, the training, the work tools that you provide, your staff policy. Then number two is you need to leverage insights. What are you seeing in terms of changing customer behaviors, in terms of the opportunities in the market, and in terms of, for example, some people have data, some manage to get into information, some to analysis, but insights is actually the big deal of what you should be looking out for. Then how do you then position yourself for these opportunities? You need to be able to look at what do you see beyond just the surface. You look for insights. What are you doing about what you see? What are you communicating with your stakeholder? For some people, the way you communicate how you are dealing with this crisis can strengthen your brand, and it can as well just bring your brand down. People will remember what you do during this time for a very long period of time. So it's important how you do all of that. And I think in terms of this is a national crisis, it's even a global crisis. I think that the organized private sector needs to also come together. I see this as an opportunity. Sometimes you find, LCCI is very active. You have their views. There's Manufacturers Union of Nigeria, there's NECA, but then sometimes it's difficult for even the policymakers to piece together what the organized private sector is all saying. So I'm proposing that we should have like a coalition of the organized private sector so that on national issues like this, we can all brainstorm and be able to put a common front forward for government to consider. So in the end, they say that good times and success build confidence, but tough times and challenges build character. Sustainability is really something that you put to test in tough times, not in good times. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Oyedele. So many insightful nuggets in your presentation and discussion. For me, something that stuck out was people first. People will remember how you handled yourself, your business, your employees, and associates through this period, even beyond the period. I think something else that stuck out for me was the discourse around business continuity and the top three concerns being liquidity, safety of personnel, and quality of network infrastructure at this point in time. And I think it's also very important when you talked about businesses cutting waste. It's not really a time to decide to halve or eliminate every budget. It's really a time to look critically at each line item and say, where can we rationalize, where can we optimize. So thank you very much for those insights. So I will go to Mr. Damilola Aloba. Dami is a partner and head of lead advisory services at EY. Damilola, would you be able to share with us your perspectives of how businesses can leverage these interesting times to think through and develop sustainable models?
All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Ogundari, and thank you for LCC. Thanks to LCCI for inviting me. I'd like to talk about a few things which one way or the other my other panelists have also touched on. And in this time of crisis, we're faced with not just a public health crisis, but also an economic crisis which affects every business across various sectors. To that extent, businesses are challenged, both from the point of view of supply chain, which obviously everyone has been talking about, and also the fact that the lockdown has prevented businesses from operating as usual. And then the configuration of our staff, whereby they used to working from their normal offices, have now been interrupted, and most people will need to work from home. And with all of this in mind, they have serious implications for businesses. And without, talking too much about what has been said, I'll probably just try to, configure my solutions or solutions into 3 different buckets, which is what businesses should be doing now, or what they are already doing now, what they are doing next after now, and what they'll be doing beyond now. Because one reality is that we don't know when this whole crisis will last. So for that reason, it's good to remain focused on what solutions can help our businesses. One thing that is certain now is that a lot of businesses need to start reviewing their business plans to remain resilient, at this kind of critical moment. Now, a lot of businesses that don't have business plans may need to start looking at how to create one. Now, if you have a business plan, what are the key variables you need to start looking at? You need to look at, what are those factors that typically affect your business? Number one, financing or liquidity is key. How do you remain liquid in this present time? What are you doing, in terms of your working capital? These things are very critical. So for that reason, every business that needs to look into the future needs to have a proper financial model that encapsulates a lot of factors. For example, vulnerabilities in the economy, GDP growth. What is the impact of government revenue on your business? What is the ripple effect of declining government revenues on exchange rates, and how does it affect you? Because we're still talking about COVID now. We also need to start looking at, what are the long-run implications of COVID on the way we do business, exchange rates, and that's very critical because that can change a lot of things. We realized that earlier on this year, the central bank adjusted the exchange rates from 360 to 380. So what is going to happen in the long run, in the medium to long term? So all of these things, including even looking at the business model, how you how you provide services to your customers. Routes to market is key. Now, a lot of businesses that have been providing services from their offices, factories, shops, and all of that, they might not be able to do that like before going forward. So what businesses have done is they've tried to look at alternative ways whereby they can get their products to their customer. You will notice that a lot of people, even hotels, they will tell you that, look, you can order food, they will deliver to you, which is very unlike them. So what is the route to market typically that your own business requires? You need to look at that. Home delivery is key, which is what a lot of people are doing. a lot of businesses are doing. No, so by the time you look at your model, financial model, vis-a-vis your business plan, you begin to factor in everything. A forecast is really to help you plan for the future. So all those measures that we've all talked about, which includes, you know, maybe reducing costs, deferring certain investments, and all of that, you know, all those needs to be factored into your business plan, including things like how do you explore alternative financing? Do you need to look at leases? Do you need to look at government intervention funds and all of that? So these are critical. But if you, in your business, if you are one that has debt already in the business, this is the time to look at how you can restructure. You can talk to your financiers and begin to look at creative ways, you know, of remaining in business without defaulting. Now that's that. Another point is the disposable income of consumers generally would have been impacted at this present time. And this is very important because the consumer that would typically afford certain kind of products or services will probably decline to purchase those kind of products at this present time. So the question is, how can you customize your products in order to be able to reach this caliber of customers that you have? Is it reducing the size? Is it creating it in a way that is different from what you've always done? You know, so purchasing power has been badly hit. So we need to factor that in as we continue to look at how to continue to increase demand for our product at this time. I mean, I spoke with a company that is into food production and all of that, and they said, look, this is a time when they are doing very well. You know, interestingly, that the only thing they tweaked in their model was that they had to look at proper means of logistics, how they can reach their various customers, you know. So that's very important. And I understand as well that staffing has been mentioned. Staffing is key. Now, we need to look at whether to retain, we need to look at how we can manage our staff. Number one, as has been said earlier on, communication is key. Continuous communication with the staff, with the various stakeholders of the businesses, both shareholders, the market, and all of that. But as it relates to staffing, you know, there's need to look at how to remain in business and still keep your staff, because it's not all about firing staff. It's not about laying off staff. It's also about how do you manage the staff that you have. You know, can you adopt a contract mode of contracting, and do you need to reduce staff as against lay off staff, and all of those kind of approaches. And then technology is key. Now, I've come to realize that a lot of businesses today have not fully adopted technology. So because, I mean, ordinarily this kind of session we're having would have been done through a physical session. But it's so interesting that you can have more reach by, you know, adopting technology. What I've seen also is that the internet broadband penetration rate is still low in Nigeria. We're still around maybe less than 35% broadband penetration rate. And I know government is working towards ensuring that this increases through the national broadband plan. But what I'd like to say is that as much as possible, it has become very apparent that technology is something that every business needs to look into and make investments where necessary. I can almost guess that not everyone, even if the lockdown is lifted today, not everyone will resume back at work immediately. It's going to be some portion of business, staff or a business will resume immediately. So for that reason, we still need to be communicating via video, audio means, and all of that. So technology needs to be well aligned to our businesses, but most importantly, cybersecurity. You know, either you're doing all these things we do online, you know, it's important to also say that we need to give priority to cybersecurity against hackers, against all sorts of malpractices and fraud that happens online. So these are areas where I think businesses need to focus on. And lastly, you know, I think it's important to begin to look at innovation as a way of running our businesses. This is very relative, but depending on where your business lies, whatever sector, how can we begin to work effectively? Do we need to partner? Do we need to collaborate? Some of those products that we typically produce, you know, do we need to produce them ourselves or partner with a company that produces them so that we can minimize the kind of costs that we'll typically incur? And in doing all of that, you realize that you save costs, and businesses will still run as expected. So to that extent, I think I'd like to stop and take further questions when the time comes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Damilola Aloba. Very insightful pointers around business planning and review, ongoing continuous active review of business plans. I also thought it was interesting that you spoke about the route to market, which has now metamorphed into route to customer, because there's no one in the market, so to say. So, you know, the business model that everyone is thinking about now is the last mile, which is the critical element, and the route to customer. I also took notes on your conversation around staffing and retention and communication, which mirrors what Mr. Oyedele had said around, you know, people will remember how they were treated in this period. Very good point on cybersecurity. Yes, technology is the new business model that underlays or overlays all businesses. However, it's very important to be sure that as that gateway is accessed, as meetings are had where confidential information is discussed, as gateways are accessed where your PIN goes in, you need to be sure that you have the right security. And innovation, businesses need to think about alliances and partnerships. It's a new day where everyone has to think of their strengths and collaborating with the strengths of others versus trying to sharpen their weaknesses in these difficult times. I'd like to, so thank you, Mr. Aloba. I'd like to go back very quickly to Dr. Adedipe. Dr. Adedipe, you were cut off halfway through the very interesting insights that you were sharing with us. I'm not sure if you are able to complete your discourse, Dr. Adedipe.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Ogunari. Now, the critical thing that companies have to realize first is that there is an irreversible change in consumer behavior. And looking at evidence around the world for countries that have reopened their economies gradually, in particular taking China as the first reference point, where it was the first one to shut down its economy, and of course the first to start to reopen the economy. Now, when the economy reopened, most consumers started to behave in a different way. Now, before COVID-19, globally in economic discourse, we used to talk about the disappearing economic man. That means the man holding his wallet and is rational in his decision as to what to buy and what not to buy. So the thinking then was that as we're going, there was no particular indication that people were rational in their purchase decisions. But post-COVID-19, the evidence so far has proven globally that most consumers now spend their money on food primarily and few essentials, especially healthcare and basic needs of life. So what then is happening is that accessing the wallet of that consumer is something you have to think through and think about. Just like you remarked just now, it's no longer about just going to the market, because the market is no longer physical, it's in the cloud. Okay, so what that means then is that that last mile, how do I migrate my business to a digital platform? And that is the major conversion today. And that is what is also happening all around the world. Then, of course, there's this particular opportunity that we need to highlight here, and it should make our businesses also get ready. Now, all over the world, governments are responding to COVID-19, having seen the collapse of supply chains and what happened with respect to demand and supply shocks. Most governments are now saying, let's look inwards, and I'll give just quick 3 illustrations. The Japanese government put out the equivalent of $230 billion US for companies in Japan that are in position to manufacture what Japan used to import, essentially from China to start with. Equally, we saw what happened in the USA, where the government said, look, the president signed executive orders, and there was, of course, a focus on producing most of what they used to import, in particular face masks, just to illustrate. Now, they discovered that about 50% of the face masks they imported from China were defective. So the government took a position that we produce now domestically, even ventilators. Now, let's go to United Arab Emirates. Only last week, United Arab Emirates took a position that we are no longer going to import face masks from anywhere else in the world. We produce internally. So if you look at this, what that points to, if Nigeria follows suit, we may likely see a lot of opportunities evolve from this as we begin to look inwards in order to substitute for goods imported. So companies now to prepare themselves for this. How should they go? Now, when we recognize that there is irreversible change of lifestyle in the light of social distancing, in terms of the hygiene guidelines and the rest of them. Of course, it also means you might begin to see a need to redesign the jobs of your employees. So in which case, you'll be asking questions about the content, because if I have to work from home, that means for you to have me on your payroll, deliver value to our customers, I must have clearly defined deliverables. So now it means if more people have to work from home, then companies have to go back to look at the job descriptions, the way jobs are designed, and of course, how employees are managed. Just like Mr. Odile said earlier on, people want to know at this time that they really matter to you. And there is this conversation that actually started before COVID-19, that in businesses, you don't need people. What you need are the right people. So how do you ensure that the right people are in your employ and that you also manage them in a way as to get value contributed for that last mile that reaches to your customer? And also, it is a time to do what I call your resource rationalization. And when I talk about resource here, it is not just about people, because oftentimes when crisis comes like this, the first line we think about is, oh, we have too many people. Let's cut down on payroll cost. Forgetting that even payroll cost is an outcome of two tables that multiply with each other. There's a matrix of the number of people you have across different units and divisions of the business. There's another metric that carries your remuneration schedule. Okay, that's what produces your personnel cost. But people often forget, all they think about is number. Now, there's also office space, because if a good number of people work from home, question, just like Mr. Loba said earlier on, when you reopen business, you're likely to have as many of your employees in the office as you used to have pre-COVID-19. So the question there would be, do you really need this much space? When it comes to physical assets and facilities, if you have multiple generators in the office, for example, the question would be, do I need the biggest of them to power the office when the number of people that need power in the office has reduced? In fact, these are practical things that I've already seen. Now, I will drop this because this is for businesses anyway, and that ranges from micro to small, medium scale enterprises. There are 4 things you must ensure happen on a daily, weekly basis in your business if you want to really create a sustainable business post-COVID-19. Maybe there are some aspects we are taking for granted before COVID-19 because things were working in a different way. For example, as we said, Nigerian economy has slowed down in terms of growth rate. Some peculiarity also, capital importation, capital inflows into Nigeria first quarter of this year. Also, yes, compared to last quarter of 2019, it increased to over $5 billion. But the issue is that if you compare with first quarter of 2019, where over $8 billion came into Nigeria, that is a major dampening of about 34%. So the challenge then is the balance between activities and finances, just like Mr. Odile and Mr. Aloba said earlier on. So how do we balance that as companies? 4 things that you must pay attention to ensure your business is sustainable. Number 1 is getting business. You don't allow the discussions around the crisis to get you carried away by not asking and looking for new business. That's very, very important. You must not lose sight of that. Then one other important test of whether you have a business that is sustainable is asking yourself on a weekly, maybe daily basis, are there transactions that we have on hand that we are working on right now? Of course, that will vary again, like the moderator said, depending on the nature of your business, which sector you belong to. Now, the third thing is that you want to also measure whether there are transactions you are completing and therefore invoicing your customers. So in which case, invoicing should be happening either on a daily or weekly basis. Anything beyond 1 week is too long in this matter of sustainability and continuity. The third one connects to what Mr. Odile mentioned earlier on, and that is your cash flow. If you have invoiced customers, what are you doing to collect those receivables? So there must be activities happening in those 4 areas. And then, of course, you must come up with a plan that links all of those activities with your financing model, as Mr. Aloba said earlier on. So when you put all of this together, then you come up with a plan that is still planned. As I said earlier on, you must have a response plan for the first half of this year, and then there's a survival plan for the second half of the year. In fact, like Jack May said, one of the co-founders of Alibaba, he said 2020 for any business is about survival. So in which case, it is not about growth or profitability in 2020. It is how do I survive? Then 2021 and beyond connects to the long-term plan that Mr. Odile also mentioned. And that is where you are now thinking about what do we need to do now in order to begin to grow our business next year and also to do profit. Of course, I have a lot more details in my slides which we share. So but let me stop here so that we can manage that time well. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adedipe. Very, very insightful conversations. I'll touch very quickly on one of the things that you mentioned, and it's the juxtapose between the headaches of understanding how to keep the business afloat at this time and the impetus or the drive to convert new business. What are some of your thoughts around how businesses can maintain that balance in these difficult times? Because across a number of conversations that we've been having in this period, I hear a lot of business people talk about the headache they have with logistics, which is the last mile, the headache they have with making sure that their staff are really optimized and they're getting value for retaining the staff in this period. Issues around even the correct engagement with ongoing mandates, right? So what are some of your views? And I'll also come to Mr. Oyedele and Mr. Aloba as well, but I'd like to hear from you first, Dr. Adedipe. What are some of your views around helping businesses to keep that balance and that momentum and leaving the headspace of, everything is in a decline at this point?
Oh, thank you so very much. That's a very interesting perspective. Now, in relating with several of our clients, we cut across different sectors of the economy, big and small, in financial services, non-financial business, even NGOs. What we have found, or perhaps I should mention also some regulatory authorities in the financial sector. Now, what we have discovered is this, that the first line in a crisis is to ensure that your business is at the faces of your customers. That means you must not operate in a way to make them forget about you. So as we said earlier on, communication is vital. But maybe in the light of that also, it could be in the form of some communication in writing that goes by email. Maybe you have some online meetings with them, virtual meetings. You might even organize a webinar for them. I mean, my friend did that for a number of our clients. We did for them free webinar. Of course, at some point, some other clients said they wanted to pay for it. So what some were willing to pay for, we did for free for some others. But to ensure that within this period, you remember that there is value we can put on the table. That is some important message that every business must communicate to its customer, that there is value we can put on the table. Okay. Now, while you are doing that, looking back home to your own, employees, I will give an example of a client. Now, for them, they were able to pair their employees into 3 categories. Now, the first category were the professional staff, then the second category, the support staff, and then the third one, the outsourced staff. So what they did at first was that, okay, up until March, everything was good, just like we see in the GDP figures, and that was still fine, first quarter. Then we see the full impact of COVID-19 this second quarter, okay? So that company said, looking forward to April and May, there's a possibility that we'll have sufficient cash to sustain this business for the next 6 months. If you are bearing costs at the current rate, which means you must profile your cost. Every business must profile its cost. So what they now decided is that if there is lockdown, it means the support staff mostly will not be able to come to work to provide support. Outsourced staff, of course, most likely will not even be needed anyway. So what they did was say, okay, in April, we are going to do a pay cut, all right? They did that in April. And then they said for me, what we do is that those who are not doing anything that contributes to value we are delivering now, we put them on leave of absence. Of course, looking at what is happening globally, especially in aviation, tourism, and then even logistics that have been badly impacted by COVID-19. So that company went that way, but they said, we still review this, which means it's an ongoing thing. So I only learned yesterday that they reviewed it, and I came and said, look, for those support staff and outsourced staff, we're going to pay them 50%, of their salary. That was what that company, the company in question did. So, but the critical thing here is that if people have to work from home, how do you ensure they still deliver value? In which case, value is now measured in terms of solving problems for your customers. So now bringing in the logistics end of it, which is the last mile. So the question is, what do we produce? Because we also have dealing with some big logistics companies in the era of this COVID-19. So the question, now looking at their own strategy, it is, how do we ensure that those who have challenges with their supply chain, especially the last mile, how do we engage with them? How do we ensure that they look our way to deliver some services to us? So every business, therefore, has to consider that. So if, for example, I do some business with a company based outside of Lagos and my main office is in Lagos, how do I still deliver service to them? So in which case, at a time like this, I must look at what it takes to deliver the final item. We had instances, for example, let me just illustrate with this. There was this young lady I met sometime last year when I went to speak somewhere at a conference. Then she approached me and said, oh, this idea of looking inwards and doing things, what I did was to connect with some women in Niger State. I empowered them, buy granules, then they make kuli. I do the packaging, fantastic packaging, and everything is going well. People come to me, they buy, and then they export. I don't get involved in the export leg of the entire transaction, but I sell locally. Now, during the lockdown, this lady sent me a message and said, look, because I can no longer physically go to Niger State, I'll switch to the food, especially the rice value chain. That was what he said. He said, now I'm a rice discounter. And what that means is that I buy in bulk, I break it to smaller quantities. Then I sent out messages to all my customers and contacts that if you have a need for food stuff, I can deliver to your doorstep. Okay? So she switched from converting groundnut to kuli, now into dealing in rice, because that's a basic when everybody is locked down at home. So the real issue here is to creatively, just like Mr. Lopa said earlier on, this is an era of, if you don't innovate, you will die. Okay? This is the era of innovation. That means you must think what to do with the box. We see that in the last slide of my 17 slides. It's the last slide there. You don't think outside the box in an era like this. You think what to do with the box. And there are many boxes in every business. What do you do with the box of personnel expenses, premises expenses, maintenance expenses, business expenses, even depreciation in terms of assets? So these are the issues that companies will have to grapple with in dealing with the last mile and surviving.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dedipe. I am thoroughly enjoying this conversation. I'm sure all of our attendees and our panelists are doing the same. Very, very interesting perspectives. We have a question from Ed. Ed, please hold that thought. I'll come back to your question. I have a very quick question for Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. So something struck me as you were discussing, and I've heard you talk about leadership a lot. You said the quality of leadership is very, very important in this time. And leadership is really around the narrative that you can bring to the people that work for you in order to inspire them to continue delivering value in these difficult times. But it's also about being able to have difficult conversations should the need arise. I know that you also juxtapose that with people first. And so my question is really around what you had said around building experiences around this time. You said we need to build a playbook around experiences. I wanted to know what perspectives you've seen from a leadership standpoint in how you can help your organization and the other organizations that you help to have meaningful conversations and lead the right way in these times.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I have been involved in managing this crisis in a number of capacities, both at PwC and some other organizations, and also for some committees of government. One thing I can tell our participants categorically is that part of being a good leader in a crisis is you have to first and foremost just stay calm. If you cannot think straight, you're likely to make mistakes. I like to say, and this is not trying to underestimate the challenges people are going through, that the world will not come to an end. And even if it's going to come to an end, worrying about it will not stop it in any case. So as leaders, you must first and foremost stay calm. And then next, it's important that you stay connected. I say stay connected with your suppliers, customers, and most importantly, your employees. So at PwC, in my unit, one of the things I did was, of course, you sit down, you start making assumptions about the problems and challenges that people are facing, when you can just ask them. So I did a survey, and it was very revealing, things I had not thought about. There were staff who said, by the way, why do I have to work in the morning till evening? If all you just want result, because in my area, the electricity is not stable in the afternoon. So I like to sleep in the afternoon and work at midnight. You wouldn't have imagined that, because maybe as a senior person, you have a generator, you have an inverter, you have solar power. You're not thinking about someone who doesn't have power, So that's staying connected and finding out what people are going through, what ideas they have, what they are thinking, their behavior, their pattern of thinking and preferences. It's extremely important. So the last one is just trying to define what success will mean to you in this period. Like I said in my opening remarks, we have sectors that are growing by as much as 24%. So at this time, we have those that are contracting by as much as 80%. So if you're in a growth sector and you are growing lower than the growth in your sector, you shouldn't celebrate, because it means you're losing market share. So for you, it might be that one of your targets is to grow faster than your sector. So it has to be that you define what success will mean to you and then work towards it. The way you can gain capacity to be able to do that, because we're asking you to manage crisis and still run your business, is to try and just explore, the capacity of your people, create teams, give them targets, a team focusing on customer and market, another one around managing your people, regulation, opportunities, technology. So don't do it all alone, because you do not have the capacity to do it all alone. And like they say, two good heads are better than one. You have the people, please use them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Oyedele. Spoken like a true leader through these difficult times. I think a lot of our attendees and panelists are also taking nuggets of, how we can lead through these difficult times. And one thing that also comes to mind is being open and acknowledging that no one knows all the answers, but together we can put heads in one place and come up with a much better solution than we would have individually. So thank you very much for that. Mr. Damilola Aloba, I'm moving on very quickly to you. Ed had a question around the impact of COVID and what this means in Nigeria, where power is poor and there are a lot of telco challenges, right? So he is saying, how are Nigerian businesses going to scale and digitalize through this process? And he has another question to say, what support is being given by the government to ensure that this happens in a timely manner? I think in addition to that, just using that as a perspective, my question to you is, following from what Mr. Oyedele had mentioned around winners and losers in this global and local economy, and the fact that some sectors are doing well while other sectors are doing very poorly. What is your view on the winners, the losers, and what can be done to enhance growth in the winning sectors, and what can be done to stop the bleeding in the losing sectors?
All right, thank you very much for that question. Let me start by saying that in response to the question being raised by Mr. Ed, it's important to say that Nigeria has been going through challenges with infrastructure long before COVID. So I think it's important to set that context because our power situation didn't start today, and our needs for broadband connectivity is something that has been ongoing. I remember that the National Broadband Plan was revised. I think it started 2015 or before that time, and was meant to end 2020. But today it's been revised to 2025 by the new minister. So what that suggests is that at the time I looked at it last, I think about 6-7 years ago, broadband penetration was around 16%. And if you look at that, 16% to now, you will realize that at 33% today, as of January 2019, that's significant improvement. We're not there yet, but we're going to get there. But I can also say to you that there's a lot of people have some better internet connectivity nowadays. A lot of people are using unlimited Wi-Fi. A lot of people can connect to Netflix and all of that, even the Zoom. And it's important to also say that the right-of-way issues that government had been facing with various states are now being resolved as we speak. Some states have crashed the right-of-way costs and all of that by as much as 90%, while some other states are also trying to do the same. So if we are able to cross that hurdle, what we're going to be seeing is more broadband internet connectivity across schools, across hospitals, across major areas where we need those kind of infrastructure. And then life becomes easier. We have digital economy and all of that. Now, the issue of power, I think, again, a lot has been done in the past, and I understand that government is still doing a lot to that extent. But as we speak, there's no doubt that the cost of running our businesses will still might go up a bit more because of the need to work from home, the need to rely on our power, electricity, and the need to use generators and all of that. But that's what we come to see. So we need to find ways of managing our costs to that extent until we're able to get all this resolved by efforts made by the government. Now, it's important to also cross from there to what are the things that we can do. You know, today, a lot of companies rely on products and inputs, raw materials from China. So the moment the borders are closed, the moment the ports are closed, the moment that there's restriction of movement, you can easily know that that's going to create serious impact on businesses. So for that reason, there's need for government to create enabling environments for import substitution, whereby we need to rely less. I know a company today that in this period, all 80% of their raw materials are sourced locally, and they're in the FMCG industry. And at this point in time, they are smiling to the bank. They are happy because business, as an essential sector in which they operate in, business is going and running as even beyond their expectation. So if I dovetail that to what are those critical sectors today, one of them is consumer market, FMCG, where we know we eat from day to day. Food is essential. Agriculture is essential. You know, so in those sectors, these are the sectors that a lot of emphasis should be on. There'll be new projects, and there's need to also ensure proper feasibilities of projects that will be going on in those sectors. Now, if you're already in those sectors, review your business plan once again in order to be able to capture all the significant opportunities that you can possibly get in those sectors, in that particular sector. I mean, the food, the FMCG, anything, agriculture, and all of that, and the value chain in those respective industries. You know, storage, logistics, as we have earlier said, they are very, very important. Another critical sector is healthcare, and healthcare cuts across just hospitals. Healthcare, hospital services, pharmaceuticals, diagnostics, equipment manufacturing in the healthcare industry, waste management in the healthcare industry. These are areas, in fact, production of syringes, things that are not, you know, really part of us, where we imagine every country in the world is importing PPEs. Even the US is importing PPEs from China. You know, when are we going to start producing? Now, Nigerians are producing face masks. You know, where did we keep all these skills before, all this expertise? You know, now we can produce, what's it called, these hand sanitizers. There are pharmaceutical industries in Nigeria that are producing hand sanitizers. In fact, some are diversifying from producing other products, beverages, to producing hand sanitizers. So we have all of these opportunities inherent in this economy that we must tap into. You know, technology is another sector that is critical, as we've said earlier on, but I don't want to emphasize technology. Technology cuts across different dimensions, even having the right platforms, the infrastructure, all kinds of technological support that is required. You know, all those needs to be factored into the business, our various sectors. And then losers, there are a lot of losers, of course. You know, some businesses, cannot even do any business except they see you. The hospitality industry, occupancy level is next to nothing. I was speaking to a player in that sector who said, look, occupancy has been zero. How many people go to the hospital, to the hotel nowadays? The travel industry, you know, and if you're an insurer and you insure those sectors where, you know, life insurance, your life insurance claims and also will increase at this present time, you know. So these are sectors that tourism is another one, you know. However, tourism could be converted into an opportunity. Tourism could be converted in such a way that it can be used to rejuvenate our present economy, our economies, in order to create activity when the lockdown is lifted. So as a result, we need to look inwards and say, how can we improve livelihood of the people as well as businesses? I also want to drop a note here that, I mean, the days of relying on foreign direct investment need to be reevaluated. There's direct domestic investment. There's investment, there's capital in this country from corporates, from individuals that we can harness to improve local industries. I mean, you can see companies and corporates donating, making donations to COVID. You know, you can see billions coming out. You know, how can't we put all that together in a pool, in a venture capital fund that can fund local businesses, help them grow, help them create jobs, right? Help them catalyze. I mean, these are things that will quickly jumpstart our economy from where it is today, rather than all waiting for FDIs here and there. And these monies will be in local currency, in Naira. So the FX exposure is eliminated. So these are critical for us at this present time. And I'd like to say that a lot of businesses at this point will be running into distress. So if they are running into distress, we've done a lot of work with companies today, running independent business reviews, trying to help them navigate a loan default, talking to their bankers for them, helping to restructure. So independent business reviews to avoid further distress is very important. So I'd like to pause a bit and one last point before I pause. Yes, I remember. One last point is health and safety for our staff. So beyond the point that everyone is working from different areas, by the time the lockdown is lifted, how do we manage the safety? How do we manage social distancing issues, the occupancy, the number of people that will be in the office at every point in time? Plus, most importantly, performance management. What are the tools in place to measure whether your staff is productive or not at this present time? I mean, if your office is in Victoria Island and you're working in Abulegba from home, how do I know that you're actually delivering? So these are critical areas that we need to focus on. And lastly, we need to look at the intervention funds. There's 100 billion credit support scheme for healthcare sector. There's 50 billion for SMEs at 5%. Now we are helping customers or clients look into those intervention funds, particularly in the healthcare industry. And you will not believe that the reception and it's gaining a lot of attention because CBN actually wants to help. So if you're in those industries, in that sector, please explore it as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aloba. I could hear your passion as you spoke of potential funding vehicles that we can consider to continue to drive business, as well as what local businesses can do to stimulate their liquidity. And as you said, you know, there are winners, there are losers. Interestingly, there are a few business models that we are seeing that are trying to recalibrate and reposition. It's interesting that you say, you know, hospitality and leisure is one of the losers, absolutely. The other day, I came across a movie theater that has put in the modalities for a car park where people drive and watch. So you buy the ticket on your device, you scan the ticket as you enter into the car park, and you sit within your car and you watch the large screen in the car park. That way, movie theater watched, revenues protected. However, the business model has been flipped on its head. Innovation has taken the form of, you know, reducing social distancing, but still driving revenue. So thank you for that perspective. We have a few questions. Obinna, Kunle, and Ed, thank you for your patience. I'll go very quickly to Obinna Anyanwu's question, and it's directed at you, Mr. Oyedele. Obinna says, you know, the IMF agrees that the road ahead is rough. They've even told banks not to pay dividends. How do you reconcile this with shareholder expectations? You know, how can we manage shareholder expectations in these difficult times? Thank you, Mr. Oyedele.
Thank you very much for that question. I think, the way I'll put it is, if you always take a long-term view, you're likely to get most of your decisions will be, if not perfect, very close to that. So whether you're a bank or whether you're an insurance company, whatever sector you operate in, but if you focus on banks, again, you find that even in Nigeria, we have so many banks and their financial positions and the challenges they face and the opportunities are not exactly the same. Some of them have very solid balance sheet that they don't have to worry really about COVID-19, at least not in the immediate term. So if banks and organizations generally will take a long-term view, and on that basis, you do your plans, have different scenarios. Have the scenario of, best case scenario, worst case scenario, and then the one that is most likely, and be very, very honest with yourself. So this is not the time to plan based on faith and hope, because I know Nigerians can be very religious. And this is not the time to do doomsday scenario that the whole world is coming to an end, but find something in between and use data. Data is very key, data and evidence-based decision processes. So once you have those scenarios and you do your projections, you can say, under the worst case scenario, are we able to pay out a dividend, for example? If your answer is yes, then pay it out by all means. The IMF's recommendation is a generic, in my view, recommendation. If your circumstances cannot support that, then you need to also communicate it very clearly to your shareholders why you're no longer paying a dividend. I think it was Shell that had to change their very long standing dividend policy just this year because of COVID-19. And they have to communicate to their shareholders why they're doing that. So once you have your plans in place, they will not be perfect. So you have to also keep them up to date regularly as new information come in. Once you have your plans in place and you take a long-term view, you'll find that you are better able to deal with this difficult time. My perspective, though, may be slightly different in terms of whether you have losers and winners. I think they're just opportunities and challenges. So there are sectors where they have significant challenges and they need to think differently. Whether you're even doing airline or whether you're doing hotel, you find some of them, even airlines that quickly keyed into, we deliver essential essential materials and equipment, and they are flying all over the world, even now with the border that is closed. There are planes that are landing in Nigeria, bringing, whether it's respirator to whatever it is. You can key into that. If you have a hotel and you have enough space, why don't you offer it for isolation or something? So just make some money while you think about your business model. I like the example you gave about a cinema, right? That's not something you would have thought about before COVID, but it just makes perfect sense now because of COVID. So business leaders have to think about their business model differently to make sure that not only do they survive, but they also thrive in the end. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Oyedele. Fully agree with you. I think even the investors are in this current economy, this local and global economy with all of us, and they see what's happening. They know it's a blanket event for everyone, So it really does depend on how you can sweat that capital, and if you're in a sector where you're winning or losing, and also if your business strategy supports your potential growth or otherwise at this time. So thank you. I have a question from Kunle Ogunde. I'm going to direct it at Dr. Adedipe. When I saw this question, I actually thought through it myself and I thought, how is this going to work? But Kunle asks, what backward integration initiatives can you recommend to an office equipment company with high exchange rate exposures? I'll let you hold that thought as I also put in Ed's question. We're all going to, for all the panelists, and it's really, Ed's question is, how can we continuously encourage collaboration among Nigerian businesses? But Dr. Adedipe, I'll allow you go now to Kunle's question around what backward integration initiatives can you recommend to an office equipment company with high FX exposure? Thank you.
All right, thank you so very much. And now, that is very specific. And the way we look at that is, first and foremost, if you're an office equipment supplier, that means you don't manufacture it. Okay, that's a basic fact, which means you source it and then you deliver to the users. All right. So that is like your value chain. That portion of the value chain for equipment is where you intervene. So now, if you are unable to source it, as it were now, for a combination of reasons, one is collapse of the global supply chains. The second one is the challenge with FX, which of course, I don't want us to delve too far into that. But the real issue here is that if you are unable to access those items, so the next thing is, what can you do? And this brings me to a remark I had intention of making before the end of this conversation. And that is to ask the question, how well and how much do you know about the existing customers? And that brings us to the issue of, we call it sick data, all right? We don't call it big data any longer. It is sick data. That means the extent to which you know your customers will give you an idea of what else you can do within that context. Now, you have been supplying the equipment. Can you now integrate into components? Can you integrate into maintenance? Can you also provide services in terms of how they use those equipment and how they can maintain them for a long stretch? For example, if ordinarily an equipment will last maybe 2-3 years, but let's even take it as an IT equipment, you completely, devalue it, depreciate it in 3 years. But now you are looking at a situation where you want this to be sustained maybe for 6 or 7 years. So what can you do there? What advice can you give them? In fact, you might even transmute from supply into providing quote and unquote consultancy service, in which case you go into advisory services in terms of how they can deal with this equipment. Then also you have to research internally in Nigeria, just as you said earlier on, that in researching internally, is there a possibility of a substitution? And then of course, that also might even make you to go beyond your normal, terrain, let me say it. In which case you begin to ask questions. Are there possibilities of research institutes and other entities that have been looking in this particular direction? Take for example now, we have a number of our higher institutions in Nigeria that are now coming up with ventilators. We've seen a good number of them come up with, hand wash equipment and the rest of it. Now, the question is, these various dimensions, how can you position your company? And I'll give you a simple illustration here. This happened, I think, to a company we know about 15 years ago. And that company shared this experience with us, that they were choosing to do a particular transaction simply because of their knowledge of the customer in person. That the chairman of the board of that company preferred that they should deal with a bigger entity. But the management insisted that they would prefer that his company handle that transaction simply because of their knowledge of the customer. So in this instance, interrogate the data on your customers and your customers, ask them, understand what other needs they have. And that will take you, I can give that as a simple example in my business experience of over 36 years now for being an entrepreneur. That most of the time, the expansion of our business into new areas in the form of this backward integration was because we did something so well for a client, and then they asked us, do you also do this? And of course, because we have competence for it, we step forward and say, yes, it's something we can do for you. And so the success of that, call it experiment, made us now to develop that into a new business platform. That is the way it goes, which means you leverage your current competencies vis-a-vis the information you have from your clients or customers to now decide which direction to go. You can backward integrate, and you can also integrate forward. But again, it depends on where you find yourself within the value chain.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adedikwe. I think that's a very important, interesting point that you raised. Most of us think immediately about backward integration plans, but you can also forward integrate. And so that's really food for thought for a number of businesses that find themselves in difficult situations at this point in time. Thank you. So I want to ask a question to each of us. I know that we all think of innovation and collaboration in different ways. And we may have seen different models that are being explored, that are working. We may have heard of other models that are not so interesting. But in all of it, I think it's important to explore. So for Mr. Oyedele, for Mr. Aloba, for Dr. Adedikwe, I'd like you to give us your thoughts around how we can encourage collaboration within Nigerian businesses and any collaboration instances that you have found interesting.
Yeah, maybe let me go first because I also want to add a few comments to what Dr. Adedikwe said about this office equipment supplier person. I think one thing we don't do very well in Nigeria is we don't plan forward. And I mean that in the context of, relative to the rest of the globe. So the price of crude oil crashed, right? Nigeria had no plan, no forward arrangement. We had, because we sell spot, right? Whereas the likes of Saudi Arabia sold forward. The reason why WTI was negative at some point is someone had sold forward. So if you know you are exposed to foreign exchange, this risk is real. If it's not COVID, it will be something else. You should be doing forward contracts just to lock in your FX as much as possible. And then try to also identify the other risks you have. For example, you can't bring in product now because of COVID-19. But then you need to open conversation with the supplier because chances are that they're looking for how to sell and all their customers around the world are struggling. You can have those conversations about payment terms, about how do you agree the exchange rate at which you use. You do have other means of doing it. And keeping in touch with and staying in touch with your customers means that when they need those supplies at this time, you can then find alternatives for them. Those alternatives could include reaching out to your competitors who have products and just make sure you supply your customer at this time. It might be that the brokerage that you get is very small, but you secure that customer so they don't go to someone else. So I think, just thinking more broadly and thinking about business risk and planning forward will help. So the question around collaboration, so I particularly like this question because I think also this is one area of opportunity that COVID is bringing more, forward for us to see visibly. So, and my particular area of interest is the organized private sector. We know that we have better capacity within the private sector. And then therefore, we shouldn't just sit back and complain. We should be able to put our views forward. We should recommend ideas to policymakers, and we should follow through. And, without sounding like Donald Trump, in trying to do all of that, we should put Nigeria first. So what tends to happen is you see some, and there's nothing wrong with that because I think it's human nature to think about yourself first. But you need to consciously take a step back and say, this is not just about us. This is about our country. Can we find a meeting point where our interest aligns with national interest? So for example, don't go around saying government should waive all taxes, right? If government waives all the taxes, how do you have a country? All the countries that are better able to handle COVID-19 are not using oil money, they're using tax money. So, and then that's why I recommended earlier on that I would like to really see a coalition of organized private sector where we can all come together and have a think tank where we help government through the thinking process. Most times you find people fault government and they complain about what they're doing because they say they are taking opinions and ideas from the IMF and the World Bank. But my interaction with very senior people in government is as a matter of fact, these are the people who offer help from time to time. So if I'm the finance minister and the only person that shows up every time is the IMF, of course I'll be compelled to just read what they are sending to me. If I don't have anything to counter it, I'll probably go ahead with it if it makes sense to me. So let's think about these issues as our problem and come together in a way that we can help shape the direction of communication and the policy of government for the greater good of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Oyedele. Thank you. I'll allow Dr. Adedikwe to share his perspective on innovations, and then Mr. Aloba will follow.
All right, thank you so very much. I think very important to note here is that if we look at human history, right from the Stone Age to the Agrarian Age, the Industrial Age, then we came to the Knowledge and then Innovation Age. Now we discovered that as we transit from one age to another, the skills that people have and the knowledge they had became irrelevant in the new age. So they re-skilled and also unlearned and relearned. And that is the important thing here, the experience you're having. Nobody at the beginning of this year, anywhere in the world, ever say the kind of pandemic we are dealing with. Which means we want to take away from this as much as possible, all right? But beyond that, collaboration has been an important way to do business, and it comes from different perspectives. You can have a collaboration with your suppliers, you can have collaboration with your competitors, you can collaborate, like Mr. Oyedele just said, Oyedele just said now, with the government. For example, in our firm, about 2 weeks ago, we put out a memorandum to the presidency on this COVID-19 and the impact on our economy. We looked at everything government had done till date, fiscal, monetary authorities. And then we said, kudos to you, government, for having done this. But these are the areas we see gaps. And these are the things we think government should address. Now, that went as a stakeholder, just like Mr. Oyedele said. So in which case, the organized private sector, we should be looking more at ourselves as collaborators rather than competitors. And in that case also, we also advocate rather than at all times criticizing government. Now, I've served briefly in government before at a very senior position. So I know what it's like. Like Mr. Oyedele said, whoever comes to my office and I hear from him often will likely be the person I will take his idea. And that becomes policy for the entire nation. And that is why we must be very constructive in our criticism of government policies, but do more of advocacy. We should do more of advocacy so that ultimately, and of course, like I said, we no longer talk about competition in the bland form. We talk about co-opetition, which means we collaborate and also compete. So that way we can get a lot more value delivered, not only to clients, but also to the society that gives us the opportunity to create and to run business. You know, that is the way I look at it, even between the employer and the employee. In terms of the remark earlier on, people first. So in which case, they are concerned about the welfare of the employees, their growth and their development. So collaboration runs across the entire spectrum, right from looking externally and then relating with policymakers, and of course, with your competitors, then of your customers. So I would like to leave it there so that we can make time to talk about other things. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. To mind, as you talked about collaboration and competition in one word, was healthy rivalry, you know, coming together, almost like healthy sibling rivalry, but, you know, coming together to sharpen our skills, co-deliver, but also bring our A game individually. So thank you very much for that. Mr. Aloba, over to you. If you'll please share with us your perspectives on innovation.
Okay, so thanks very much. In my view, when you're considering collaborations, it's important to look at how best to allocate risks, right? And it's very important because there's need to assign risks to parties that can best manage them, particularly in this period of crisis. So there's an entity, for example, if you look at the government-private sector collaborations, as it has played out in this COVID era, you realize that the role of private sector became very important. It became a driver for a lot of things that happened and how government is reacting to, the crisis. So for that reason, who can best manage a risk, even within your business? Is it your supplier? Is it your JV partner? If you have a JV partner that is providing some level of support, that has the technical knowledge, technical partners, technical know-how, and has the funding, why can't you enter into an agreement, a collaborative agreement with them? We can come in different ways. It could be a JV partnership. It could be that partner investing in your company so that you can have, a war chest of capital to run the business. I mean, these are different ways you can look at it. Today, collaborations too are important for cost optimization. So if you are running a business whereby, you don't have many cars, pool cars, why can't you partner with Uber and say, look, Uber, you handle my fleet. All my staff will be running through. I mean, and Uber is has been so innovative nowadays, whereby they have different products or services for different clientele base, and so you can look at that. Why do you need to buy pool cars every now and then? Why do you need to have motorcycles running across the state? Why can't you partner with Max or Kada or all those motorcycle logistic companies? So for this reason, one just needs to think aloud. What are those things that you can pass across to agencies or organizations that can better run those things, minimize your cost, and still deliver quality and excellent value to you? So for that reason, it requires critical thinking and critical business decisions, at this present time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aloba. Thank you for that. I think something that I took out of that was risk assignment is critical for cost optimization. If we're able to assign the risks, then we're better able to say, what should I be doing? And what should I partner with somebody else to deliver in a more efficient, useful way? So thank you very much. I'm having so much fun. I'm learning so much, and I'm sure all of our attendees are, as well as our panelists as well. We've overrun our time, but we're going to have another 10 minutes just so that we can accommodate a few more questions. While Rashidi reached out to say he has a question around the hospitality sector, especially hotels and related tourism activities. And his question is whether it's worth continuous investment in hospitality in order to comply with government regulations against COVID-19 precautions for reopening. I take that to mean the opportunities to use the hotel assets as isolation centers. And his question is, should he go that route or hold on to his investments and diversify to another sector? I'll leave it open to any of our panelists who is able to. Mr. Oyedele, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think because the participants seem to have picked on the comment I made earlier on, so I'll try and build on that. So I think for every business in every sector, you have to look at your own scenarios and situations very differently. So you have to say to yourself, would all of these ideas fit my circumstances, and is that what I want? Of course, there will be risk in everything you do. In fact, not doing anything itself has a risk component. So if you're thinking about using your premises for isolation, you need to think about the risk. Compliance with regulation, what people will think, because you may even find that after COVID, people will refuse to come there. They'll say there's coronavirus there. So how do you manage that? One thing that I realized also was during this lockdown, there was a day my wife said, why don't we just order cooked food right? And there were a couple of guys online, and we said, okay, we're going to order a few things, you know, jollof rice, meat, you know, cooked soup. And by the time we called and placed the order, they said, well, the earliest they can supply anything to us will be 4 days from when we called, because they were fully booked. They could not cope. So imagine I have a hotel. I can't take in guests because of COVID-19, but I have a restaurant in the hotel. Why don't I amplify my restaurant business and start doing food that I can deliver? So you keep all your employees busy, right? Then you make money. Government says you're essential because you're selling food, and you just find it's easier for you to cope with this period. So in other words, you have to think innovatively, you have to look inwards, you have to look at your own circumstances differently from the other people, and then go for what is best for you, bearing in mind the risk and the potential rewards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oyedele. I think very, very clear question. So I hope a very clear response to Mr. Wael. Ruti,
You seem to have lost the moderator.
Yeah, I think so. I was wondering whether it was just me. So I think we may have
I
lost.
thought I was the person too.
Okay, I think she's back.
Okay. So maybe while we're waiting for her to be back, you know, I saw even, okay, I think she's back now.
yes, thank you so much, Mr. Port. There were a lot around technology support and how we are able to work around the technology challenges. We work around them. This just happened to your moderator. So his question was really around how Nigeria can position to take advantage of the supply chain gaps that are happening globally. So I'll leave that open to any of our panelists who is. The question is, how can we position to take advantage of the supply chain gaps that are happening globally?
Well, I think maybe I can give a shot at that. As I said earlier in some of my contributions, that because of the collapse of supply chains globally, quickly described as gaps, the manner of response of most governments around the world is to look inwards. And that means, in fact, we give illustrations here. Now, immediately China shut down its economy when they went on lockdown. Peugeot and Nissan put out notices to their customers that if China did not reopen its economy and they will have access to the supply chains for components and parts, then Nissan and Peugeot were going to close their plants. So now that was a practical illustration of the impact of a breakdown of the supply chains. Now, almost all around the world, we realize that China indeed has become the manufacturing base for the entire globe. And so when it became impossible to source things from China, either as inputs or finished products, it became also obvious to everyone that we wouldn't have suffered this much if we were producing these things inwards. So the real opportunity that Nigeria can take advantage of here is to look inwards. And I put it simply this way, that there are 3 legs, or if you call it planks, to economic activities. You are in production, or in consumption, or in exchange, which is trade, the link between them. Now, any activities you are involved in falls in any of these 3 planks. So the real challenge for Nigeria is that over the years, what we have been doing was producing what we're not consuming, and also largely consuming what we're not producing. So this is an opportunity to link the production and consumption legs. So in which case, we begin to produce what we consume, and also as a deliberate policy, we begin also to consume what we produce. That is the only process that also connects to development. Because if we do it that way, we begin to create jobs. But if we depend largely on imports, which of course runs on the back of global supply chains, then we will be creating jobs abroad. And that is a major problem here. So that's the opportunity that COVID-19 has given us to look inwards. But I will also recommend, in the light of this conversation, that our government should also look at what the Japanese government has done with respect to this. And that is to put resources to support companies that can produce things that hitherto they used to import from China and from around the world. So that, I think, is the major advantage we can take of the gaps in the supply chain.
Yeah, maybe just to add to that, I think also from maybe 3 different dimensions in terms of supply chain. So I'll say, supply of what? So is it intellectual property, is it services, and is it goods? So in terms of intellectual property, disruption was very minimal. For services, we have some level of disruption, but people are actually beginning to interrogate why can't I outsource? So, and I was saying to, Nigerian government recently, one of my sessions with them, that Nigeria should be thinking about positioning itself now for shared services. Can Nigeria be a shared service center? Because all over the world, people are beginning to question, why do I have this in-house? Can't I outsource it? So in that sense, the world is getting more global in terms of, services and IP. The one that is a little bit more challenging, which we tend to focus on the most, is the goods aspect of it. Now, this is where you need to think about, is there anything I can produce rather than import? Can I also encourage my supplier abroad to start producing locally? So this is where you have to also think about, what other options do you have? Maybe I don't need to source my supply from where I have to pay dollars. Can I get it from somewhere else where I pay in another currency that is more accessible and the terms are better? So we have to think about this holistically, and I'll say this is another area where collaboration within the private sector is important, and even more importantly, the private sector collaborating with government.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
If I can just also add to that, if you don't mind, I think the
Please
last point I want, 1 or 2 points around government actually industrializing the economy. We're at a point where industrialization is key, and the more government is able to create that enabling environment and reviving a lot of industries, textile industry, essential industries as they may be, opening up free trade zones. These are ways in which industrialization will continue to bring out yield positive results for the economy. And this is supported by the enabling infrastructure like power, good roads, and all of that. I mean, then you're beginning to see less reliance on, those global supply chain that we currently rely on. And also, if we're doing all of this, we need to be mindful of our borders to ensure that they're not as porous as they were a while back, whereby, the local industries are not well protected, So these are key areas that we need to focus on. Today, it's important to say that the creative industry in Nigeria is vibrant as they are. You have a textile industry whereby people are practically wearing locally made textiles, fabrics. That's very notable. you know, and we rely so much on this. Everyone wants to wear local fabrics as against going to buy in America and all of that, you know. And again, you know, the entertainment industry, we watch Nollywood. That is a very important sector. I mean, we even export it. So what can we do to all these sectors that, you know, are already doing well, whereby, you know, we can continue to depend less on global sources? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aloba. Thank you, Mr. Oyedele. Thank you, Dr. Adedipe. I think at this point, we have had so many interesting perspectives. I want to thank each and every one of you for sharing and for enlightening us through how businesses can remodel for sustainability and scale in this period. Dr. Yusuf, I think it will be in order for you to give us closing remarks. I would like to thank the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry for this fantastic platform. I think that in putting heads together and in thinking through our problems, we come up with more unique and useful solutions. I think that the thought leadership that has come out of this session is invaluable for both members and non-members, and it also reflects your charter to support businesses and provide stronger linkages within the business climate and environment. So over to you, Dr. Muda.
Yeah, thank you very much, our very able moderator. You have moderated very well, as Jerry Ghana will say. And that was excellent. Thank you very much, and we thank all our very distinguished panelists. Let me invite the president for final remarks on this. Then I now invite the chairman of our Business Education Service and Training Unit, Mrs. Damola, to do the vote of thanks. Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Yusuf. I think my remarks are very short. It was a really exciting session. I'm sure our participants had a great time. I did. I'd really like to thank Mrs. Ogundari. You're a wonderful moderator. That was very well done.
Thank you, ma'am.
And we didn't feel the time pass at all. Our speakers were fantastic. I liked the various perspectives that they brought. And at some point they intersected with each other, and it gave one a broader view of what the way forward could be about. So mine is just to say a big thank you to you as our partners. We will continue to collaborate with you going forward, and we look forward to more interesting times ahead of us. Thank you so much.
Mrs. Damola, please. Okay, I'm not sure Ms. Damola is still there. Well, the president has, on our behalf, expressed our appreciation to all our panelists and the moderator and all participants. It remains for me to thank you all once again for finding time to be with us. And I hope we get these presentations and we share with our participants. Because I noticed some of them have asked if you can get the slides from the panelists. We get it, we make it available on our website for participants to download. So once again, I thank you all very much for this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a great evening. Thank you.